I'd like to make a few videos basically about my testimony. That's probably more profitable than even preaching out of the scriptures. Just to share with you what God has done in my life, what I've done and why, what He's done. In 1977, my wife and I sold everything we had. The house we lived in Southfield. I had 15 single-family rental properties that we sold and dispersed the money. We had cars, of course, a couple of luxury cars. I was a real estate broker. I'd done pretty good, you know. I was 34 years old, 35 in 1977. I could have retired at 34. We wouldn't have had a big major income, but we could have made it. We'd have been able to pay the rent and our mortgage, you know, and take care of things like that. So we sold everything we owned, gave a lot of it away, and moved into a little rental property in Farmington. Why would a guy do that? I mean, I had no income. I had no idea where money's going to come from. Why in the world would anybody sell out like that? I was on my way to being a millionaire. My plan was by the time I was 40 to have $1 million. And I was en route to do it. I had another 6 years, and I just had to keep buying properties and making money. I was selling and listing and selling real estate, buying and selling. Why do we do that? I was raised in the Salvation Army. Yeah, the Salvation Army was a church before it was a social organization. But when I was 14, I didn't want to be there anymore. My folks took me to church, all of us, 8 of us, every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, Wednesday nights, and then Thursday I had to go for the songsters and the band. I had to play in the band. By the time I was 14, I was fed up. I didn't want anything to do with that. So I had the run of the house with 8 kids and in a small home, and we didn't have a lot of money or anything. I just did what I wanted to do. I stopped going to church. I didn't want to go anymore, so they just let me go. But I should tell you this. When I was about 8 days old, my father stood in the congregation and lifted me to God and gave me to God. And he really let God have me. He didn't try to do anything. He taught me the best he could, did the very best he could, but they did not try to do anything with me. They didn't preach to me, anything like that. They gave me to God. This is a wonderful thing. Anyway, so at 14, I had the run of the house. I was going around with my family, my friends, got into a lot of trouble over the years. And by the time, I was about 23, I married my wife, who I still have today, 58 years ago. We got married, and I was stumbling around trying to figure out what I was going to do to make a living. I had no education. I left school early. I didn't have an education. And so I got into the real estate business. I was selling all kinds of stuff before that, but I got into the real estate business, and that's where I excelled, and I made money at it. But by 1976, November, as it were, I found myself just so sad and so lonely and so melancholy of all things done. And I'd had an adventurous life before that. And now I was just making money, and I had a wife and family, and I was just burdened down with it. To look at me from the outside, this guy's got it made. Look, he's got a beautiful wife, got these 3 great kids. I mean, I had money to do what I wanted to do. My son wanted to go to camp. I rented a plane and flew him to camp rather than put him on the bus. He'd had a greater time with the kids on the bus. Pride. So I was just so distraught. Nobody could know that. My wife was the president of the local PA. She had money in her checking account. As long as that was school, she didn't have to know anything about me. I mean, I was a lousy husband and a terrible father. Doing the best I could, which was not very good. But I was really dark inside. One night I was out with my brother-in-law. We were drinking. This was in the middle of November of 1976. We were out drinking and having a good time and, what have you. So we were at this little place downtown Farmington, and he called me over. I was sitting at the bar, and he called me over. He had a couple of girls on the line. He wanted me to go out with him with these girls. Well, I'm not going to do that. I mean, he would do that, but I'm not going to do that. So I stayed at home. I stayed at the bar. And a fellow who owned a sandwich shop in town, He came up and slapped me on the back, took a cigar out of his pocket and shoved it in my pocket. He said, Kennard, there's a God in heaven. I saw my daughter being born tonight. Oh, that's great, Dan. Why is he talking about God? That was my response. I said, why are you talking about God? I had a friend who said he was a Christian. And I'm sure he was. He went to church. He was a nice guy. He was just Christian. I know he was a Christian. But he never preached or anything like that. But his influence around me, he took me to the church a couple of times. Yeah, okay. I went. There wasn't much to it, to me. And it was a big church in Detroit. Good church. But it didn't touch me that I knew of. You don't know what God's doing. So anyway, I left. Good night, Dan. Good night, Donnie. I left. Went home. The next morning was Tuesday, the 16th of November, 1976. I should get back up just a moment, back to that Friday night before that Monday with my brother-in-law and Dan. Friday night, I'm in an office supply city place, and here's this guy who's the son of a friend of mine. Now, the son was older than me, and the dad was way older than me, but I liked the dad. He was a rough and tumble iron worker, Frank. And we were buds. And Bob, what are you doing, Kennard? I told him. And he put his finger right in my chest. Now, he's as tall as me. Put his finger in my chest and said, Kennard, you'll never be happy until you meet Jesus Christ. That man, Jesus Christ. Well, that was a weaver's beam in my soul. And I said, listen, Bob, I got to go. Look at the time. And off I go. Anyway, then Tuesday, I just told you what happened. On Monday, I told you what happened. Tuesday morning, I go to my office. And the mail came. And in the mail was a little booklet called Success Unlimited. I got that every month. Came out of Chicago. A guy named W. Clement Stone was the publisher. Always had encouraging stories, motivational kind of stories. Well, on the front was a headline of a guy who was a real estate guy, and his business was in trouble, and he took on a silent partner, and that silent partner helped him, and he got his business back together. Well, I didn't have any trouble with my business, but I've been thinking about the possibility of finding somebody with more money than me to put in the money. I put in a little bit, but I do the work, and we start going into industrial, commercial real estate. I do the work, lease it out, and we split the profits accordingly. I've been thinking about that because I was only in residential. So anyway, I thought I'll read this. This could be good. I started reading. And when I found out who his silent partner was, I felt like I'd been robbed, like I'd been lied to. And sideways, I took the book and threw it across the room into the hall. God was his silent partner. What is he talking about? Come on. So I got in my car. I was going to stop and get a couple of six-packs and fill it with gas, get some cigarettes, just drive out I-96 toward Grand Rapids and just think. Maybe put some soft music on and just think. Well, I didn't do any of that. I just went out and got on I-96 at Middleville Road in Farmington. And I didn't drive 2 miles. And I'm driving along and I said, God, if you're real, I need you. Suddenly, my car, just like it happened this morning, my car flooded with this presence, went into my heart. I erupted in tears. I pulled off to the side of the road, and I sat there for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I don't know, just regurgitating all the loneliness and the sorrow and the hell and everything that was wrong with my life and everything was wrong with me and God. I'd get a new life. So when I stopped talking like that and I wiped my face, I looked out the window and I felt like I saw color for the first time in my life. And I knew immediately something happened to me. My life has been cut off at my heels and I've been given a new life. How exciting. But I only had one desire now. Only one. I wanted to know who this person is. I want to know who it was that touched my life so. And he was there and he stayed there. That presence, that rich presence was there like it is right now. And he just took me. I went home and my actions began to frighten my wife. I changed. I began doing things I'd never do before. Take the kids to shop for their Cub Scouts. So I wouldn't do that. Leave that to her. Give her money and let her do it. I changed. I took Linda out, my wife, a couple of days. I couldn't tell her. She used to tell preachers to get off the porch. She'd come knocking on the door. She was raised Catholic. Didn't want anything to do with things like that, religion. And I told her what happened to me. And she says, wow, I wonder if that can happen to me. Well, it did. I started dragging my family to churches. We went to the first 3 churches and I kind of did. But I went to that 4th church, the one my friend took me to, and I sensed that same presence. And there my wife responded to the Lord and gave her heart to Jesus and followed me, and off we go. And less than a year later, we're out of business. We've sold everything we own. Why? Because God told us to. He told us to. We read the Bible all the time, and out of the scriptures, Jesus showing us that he takes care of the birds, he'll take care of us. Sell what you have, give it away, follow me. So in that little rented house, my wife and I sat down with our 3 sons and held hands on the living room floor, and I asked God one thing. Lord, we've done what you asked. What do you want us to do now? He spoke to us. Follow me. That was 46 years ago. This month, 46 years. That first experience was 47 years ago next month. That's why a guy would do that. No other reason. Have you had that experience? Have you turned to God? Get away from your religion and all that other stuff you're fooling around with. Turn to God. Say, God, if you're real, I really do need you. Get away from the crowd. They're not going that way. I'm sorry. Get away from the crowd. God, I need you. I need you. That old man told me that you would come and live in me like that, and you talk to me all the time. I want that. If you'll do that, he'll come, and you'll know him. I'll share some of my other experiences with you, because as a result of that one experience, God just totally changed our lives. It's totally changed us. Travel the world, and not with anything except Him. We have nothing else to gain. We lived on faith, absolute raw faith. Never asked anybody for money. Never took an offering. Never stood on a prayer line. Nothing had stopped. He's real, and He'll keep His word. Turn to Him, would you? God, if you're real, if you're really real, I need you. Come into my heart. Let me have what that old man's talking about. Well, God bless you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.